Simon can't believe his ears. Filipino singer's Elvis' voice breaks the internet. From the moment the stage lights rose, 17-year-old Marco de la Cruz stood frozen in place, palms trembling around a microphone he'd borrowed from his school's music room. To the millions watching online, he looked like any nervous teen on the brink of a dream. But backstage, people whispered a different story. The story of a boy who had spent years singing not for fame, but for someone who could no longer hear him. Marco grew up in a tiny coastal barangay in the Philippines, where the sea hummed louder than the town's electricity. His mother, who had raised him alone, worked long days selling fruit at a roadside stall. Every night, exhausted but smiling, she asked him to sing "Can't Help Falling in Love," her favorite Elvis song. "Anak," she would say, "your voice, it heals my whole day." Marco didn't believe her, not at first. But when she fell ill 2 years earlier and the hospital trips began draining their savings, his singing became more than a hobby. It became a promise. He vowed he would one day sing on a big stage, not for glory, but to help his mother rest without worry. But destiny took an unexpected turn. Just months before AGT auditions, his mother lost most of her hearing due to complications from her illness. On the night it happened, Marco held her hands and cried quietly so she wouldn't hear the pain in his voice. She looked at him, read his trembling lips, and whispered, "You keep singing, anak. Even if I can't hear you, the world will." It was those words that carried him to the United States, thanks to the entire barangay who fundraised for his plane ticket by selling home-cooked meals and handmade bracelets. Marco promised he'd repay them all someday. For now, all he had was a borrowed microphone, a second-hand suit from a neighbor, and the voice his mother once called a gift. As Marco stepped in front of the judges, Simon Cowell leaned forward, studying him with a kind of curious suspicion. "What will you be singing?" Simon asked. Marco swallowed. "An Elvis classic, sir, for my mom." Those 3 words made Sofia Vergara place a hand on her heart. The music began, soft, nostalgic, shimmering like a memory. But when Marco opened his mouth, something extraordinary happened. His voice wasn't just similar to Elvis. It felt like Elvis, warm, velvet deep, heartbreakingly sincere. Audience members shot up from their seats. A woman in the front row started crying before she even realized it. Backstage, the crew looked at each other in shock. Simon's eyes widened, his jaw tightening in disbelief. He leaned back, stunned, then leaned forward again, as if trying to confirm his ears weren't tricking him. "No way," he murmured, audible, even through the audience's growing cheers. But Marco wasn't thinking about the crowd, the stage, or Simon's stunned expression. He was thinking about his mother, sitting in a tiny room in the Philippines, watching the live stream with subtitles on, waiting to feel proud even without hearing a sound. Halfway through the performance, something unexpected happened. The speakers suddenly cut out. Technical failure. Gasps filled the theater. Marco's heart slammed. For a terrifying moment, silence swallowed the room. But then, with trembling breath, He made a choice. He kept singing. No microphone, no music, just his raw voice, powerful enough to carry across the hall. The audience grew still, leaning in. Stagehands froze. Even Simon stood up, straining to hear. And somehow, his voice grew stronger. It wasn't just imitation. It was emotion, every fear, every sacrifice, every late-night song he'd sung for the woman who could no longer hear him. The vulnerability in his voice cracked the room open like sunlight after rain. Then came the moment no one expected. A crew member rushed in with a backup mic, but instead of grabbing it, Marco shook his head gently. "Let me finish like this," he whispered. It was the purest act of bravery the show had seen in years. When he hit the final note, the audience erupted, screaming, crying, cheering. Sophia covered her face with both hands. Heidi Klum clapped above her head like a child. And Simon just stared at him, speechless, eyes shimmering with something between awe and gratitude. Then Simon did something rare. He stepped onto the stage, approached Marco, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just sing," he said softly. "You reminded us why music matters. I don't know who taught you to perform like that, but you honored them today." Marco's voice cracked. "It was my mom." What happened next broke the internet. Simon walked back to the judges' panel, pressed the golden buzzer, and said, "For your mother." Golden confetti rained down like blessings. Marco stood there shaking, tears blurring the lights, imagining his mother smiling at a screen thousands of miles away, unable to hear it, but able to feel it. And in that moment, Marco realized something profound. Love doesn't need sound. Courage doesn't need perfect timing. And sometimes, kindness echoes farther than any microphone ever could. By the next morning, his audition had surpassed 20 million views. Messages poured in from around the world. Americans, Filipinos, strangers of all ages, thanking him for reminding them of hope. Marco didn't become famous because he sounded like Elvis. He became beloved because he sang with a heart that refused to give up. And somewhere in a small coastal home in the Philippines, a mother pressed her hand over her chest, feeling every vibration of pride that words and even sound could never fully express.